Evolve 360, a holistic approach to life, is an exploration of learning through experience by transforming individually and culturally as a whole by taking a 360-degree look at the quality of our life, including the limiting beliefs, worn-out paradigms, and destructive habits that have led us to where we are today, and to instead create or revolutionize a new life vision that brings greater peace, appreciation, fulfillment, clarity, happiness, and joy as we ultimately evolve. In our last episode, Shelley and I took a look at our education system before COVID, during the pandemic, and what needs to be done to help our kids move forward as leaders of the 21st century world. In this episode, we're going to take a look at how educating our future leaders can help them move forward as adults in their careers, business, and life, or keep them stuck. So let's dive in. Welcome to the Evolve 360 Shelley Shell Show with
Cheli Grace
and Shelley Devine. How are you, soul sister?
I am doing fantastic. I'm doing great and just so happy to be here at another really awesome show. Today's show is really gonna be amazing because you guys are gonna see the method to our production here and where we're gonna go, where we're gonna take you. We've been taking you on a journey.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey, don't you think?
It totally has been quite the journey.
It's been surprising too for us because we didn't really, I mean, like, who'd have thought that we started a conversation because of COVID and here we are now, how many episodes in? This is the 19th episode.
19.
And we're on a journey together as business partners.
Yes.
You know, we're going to take what we're doing here. So you guys be prepared. We're like, we have some great stuff that we're putting together to share with you and to keep this ball rolling. And we're so excited to kick off. We talked about in our last episode about educating, our youth and bringing in, you know, these new leadership qualities, but what does that take? And in today's show, we're going to be talking about some stuff, man, about these four compadres that we're going to have along in our life, right? They're four compadres.
You got that right. You got that right. They're everywhere. And it's the transformation of how we are growing our future leaders. But then that future leader is going to end up being an adult, going to have a career, a business, going to change the world. And how these four, Shell calls them the compadres. I call them the power players.
They are power players.
I know, because I see them as like, you know, here they come to save the day or to create a nightmare in your life.
That's so true.
I know, right?
So true. And the thing of it is you don't even realize it. I mean, if we didn't study with Carolyn, I would have had no clue about these four archetypal patterns and how they play not only in my life but everyone's life.
Nobody can get away from these power players. I don't care where you live, who you are, what culture you're born in, they are there to haunt you. So
to keep you on track.
To keep you on track.
To keep you aligned. To keep you aligned. And when you're not aligned, man, stuff catches up with you.
Yes, they're like taskmasters. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, wow, this is part 2 of our series, and we are going to, like we said, jump into the power plays that show up. And you know, power plays are everywhere in our life since the time that we were little. Yeah. Some of us learned to navigate them if we were in large families. If you know, it just depends on your entire circumstance. A lot of times psychologists say, what creates a child's, is it nurture? Is it your nature? it's a combination of that and many other things. And into that aspect, I think we can infuse the power players. So, you know, as our country is moving forward, we're still having these debates about school. And are we going to be online? Are we going to be offline? And being an educator, and this is part 2 of this series of Growing Future Leaders, people think, oh, school's just about academics. Absolutely not. It is about transforming that entire child into a fantastic, very well-rounded adult. And to me, I always, when I ran my school, we used to do the holistic child. Academics is a portion of it, but you have your social, your emotional, your athletic, your health, your interactions with adults and with children. You know, there's so many components to it. And one of the things that I'm kind of concerned is our kids aren't getting that right now with virtual education.
Oh no.
And that's part of your, you know, part of life. It's part of you learning to be who you are and learning to integrate and engage with other people. And those skill sets transfer over when you're an adult, and you have to work in teams or groups, or you have business partners or what have you. And, you know, it's interesting because little children start becoming aware of these power plays. And as we become adults, we don't know how to deal with them. And as kids, a lot of times we swallow whatever's happening and we just shift it down. So today we're going to take you on a journey of these power plays and how they not only form our character, but our intuition at a small age, and they keep on going, like we said. They are there as our taskmasters, as our compadres, as our power players. And they are the child, the victim, the prostitute, and the saboteur. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're saying, I don't like the way that you guys called these power players by name. Well, these are energy dynamics, you know.
We use them all the time, though. Like, I mean, in everyday life, you know, you hear these terms, you know, a lot.
Yes.
So they do. They're neutral, as Shelley just said. They're
neutral terms.
Neutral. The way we are bringing them up in this conversation that we're having, and they are symbolic, and they actually contain in them the language of the divine, like they carry that. And part of, you know, like when we did Sacred Contract of America, it wasn't just about America. It's about us as individuals, and we each have a sacred contract. And these power plays that unfold in these archetypal patterns, we can use to start to have that conversation with Source or God. And they come through in these archetypal energies that come in, that we all have to deal with. And it's such a fascinating journey, because you have them as a child too. It's you know, like, and you have them as a teenager, you have them as a young adult, you have them as a middle-aged adult. and you can see really how they've played out by the choices that you've made throughout your life, and you can see how they show up. And so in today's episode, we're going to, you know, kind of dive into these a little bit, right, Shel?
Yeah, we're going to dive in, and we're going to follow the thread from childhood to adulthood. And they are in every aspect of our lives, and they deal with our power, how we hold on to it, how we give it away. So let's dive into the show, and let's start with an intention. Ooh, and the intention from today is from our teacher that we absolutely adore, and her name's Carolyn Myss. And I want to start with a quote. Power is at the root of the human experience. Our attitudes and beliefs, positive or negative, are all extensions of how we define and use power. So, are you ready to meet our power players?
Yeah, that's quite a quote, though, right? Like, I mean, we've been talking about power every episode, basically every single episode. So, hello, people. We got to deal with power. And how do we deal with power? Well, today we're going to, you know, talk about.
Dive in.
Yeah. And some in the 4 core archetypes that are so, with us our entire life. They're universal, as we keep saying over and over again. The reason why we're saying this is because we want to get you interested, because they affect your life. So these power plays, we have 4 of them. The first one is the child, right?
And I want to tell everybody, they affect your life so subtly sometimes that you don't even know what's happening until one day you wake up and it hits you between the eyes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And too, like what we were saying too before that is, these archetypal patterns, we don't mean them in a bad way, especially when we say the prostitute.
I know.
We have a prostitute? What? We don't mean it in a bad way. It's just a neutral energy that, we use that term because it definitely highlights and we know like what that symbolizes, especially when we give what the background is for these and what to look out for. Then you're going to realize, oh, well, that makes sense. Yeah. Right. And that's how that's showing up in my life,
Yes, it is. And the prostitute is the guardian of faith.
Yes.
The saboteur is the guardian of choice.
Yep. And the victim is the guardian of self-esteem. And back to the child is the guardian of innocence. And I feel like, there's been times in my life as an adult where I really felt like I lost my innocence. And one of those significant times was during separation and divorce. Boy, did I get like the wake up call of like what, choices can make and life and stuff. And I felt like, wow, I am just not innocent anymore. The world, I'm seeing it in a completely different way.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I know that I've gone through these throughout my life, especially as a child. Because I know that my parents came here, and these are the 4 survival archetypes. We came here from Cuba, and I keep telling, everybody and the viewers. So my parents were in survival mode. They were refugees. They came here. They're starting all over again. So of course they're going to be, and those archetypes had a big hold on me for a very long time. Yeah. And I just want to tell everybody that it's not like, oh, you learn how to do it. They're throughout our lives until the day that you decide to go to another planet, because it's the journey of self-discovery and self-development and personal development is a journey that once you get on it, it's forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's
and it's so important to get on that journey, because then you'll be awake and aware of what is influencing you. Now, influencing in your very personal life, the choices, the decisions, the behaviors, the habits that you have. It becomes very clear as to why you make the decisions you make in your life, and then you can negotiate, like you can negotiate within yourself. Is this going to be the right choice? And I could do this for a certain amount of time. I know I'm doing it for this, that, or the other reason. But, how is that going to affect? Now, what's really key is these will all affect our cell tissue too. And people don't, sometimes don't realize the correlation between health and wellness and then the spiritual, psychological, emotional aspects that these archetypal patterns play in our lives. And I think as you get older in your life and you have more life experience, then you start to ask those questions, why am I here? What am I doing? And these were questions that I think Shelley and I asked, and which led us to, say, Carolyn Mason, to study with her. It's like, what's my purpose here? And what is life all about? Especially when you go through, you start to really see these archetypal patterns playing out when you go through some sort of trauma or some sort of life crisis. And right now, I think it's kind of poignant that Shelley and I have been discussing like all this power energy all the way through this season 1 of our podcast. And we're bringing it to you because we are in a bit of a crisis altogether globally with this pandemic. And we see things that are failing us, certain maybe institutions, maybe educational systems. And we have to kind of come together and figure out, okay, what are we going to do to navigate the waters of creating something that's better as we move forward? And part of it is understanding how are we all co-creating what is happening out there. And at first, you have to come into understanding the self. And understanding the self on this level of survival, because we have been in survival mode. Every nation, from government to states to countries to the individual, their businesses, all the way down into our family life. And we are continually kind of getting that ball, we're on a hamster wheel with it. And it's because we don't understand these 4 survival archetypes and how they play out in our life.
Let me help you with a story. Because I like bringing stories in.
Yeah.
Because it makes it easy. Because a lot of times what we talk about can be a little confusing.
Sure.
We've been studying this for over 20 years, and we want to bring it to everybody in a way where you can apply it and give you practical tips. So the child is the keeper of the innocence, right? So what we talked about is schools. Think about a schoolyard. In the schoolyard, everybody's playing, and then you have a couple of kids sometimes that are the bully.
Yeah.
And how come some kids get bullied and some others don't? It just depends. Maybe their skill sets are better, whatever the case may be. But if you don't deal with that toolkit of dealing with the bully, what happens is that you start swallowing that. You start swallowing that.
Yeah.
And then what happens is that as an adult, it starts showing up in the workplace. It can hold you back for fulfilling your destiny, because all of a sudden you don't have the right words to tell that person, stop it. You don't have the boundaries.
And that'll follow you all through life, right?
It follows you through life. That's a thread.
Yeah.
Right. And
that's
look,
what you've seen. Yeah.
Totally. I've seen it. And we're parents.
Yeah.
Shelley and I are both parents, and parenting isn't easy.
Not at all. And I mean, like, as a parent, dealing with, say if you have a child that's been bullied, I mean, that's a hard thing to deal with, as a parent. But then just, I don't know, like, I've told some stories of me being in the, my childhood, things that have happened. And when we were kind of prepping for some of this show and some of these series, I was brought to mind. My sister used to say, "Oh, you were a safety patrol nerd." She would tell people, like we would have this backlash, and like if we were out, like, like when we were in our early 20s and we might have been out like meeting guys and stuff like that, she would bring that up to embarrass me. All right. And so it was really actually kind of funny, because I was a safety patrol nerd. I would help kids cross like the crosswalk, but then on the playground, say if a kid was getting bullied, the kid would run to me, and then I'd have to go stand up to the bully.
Because you were the safety patrol girl.
Yes.
I love it.
But in hindsight, it was like, you think, I mean, I had like a very, I guess, a strong backbone when it came to those sorts of things. I was pretty fearless, and probably it was the athlete that came out. But I'm thinking, God, if I had to deal with a bully back then, what would I do? To stand up for myself. Well, as a kid,
you're scared. What if the kid is bigger than you? You don't want to be a tattletale.
You're getting teased, or they're pushing you down. Maybe it's a physical thing. Well, if you don't ever deal with that, it follows you. You're like Shelley's saying, your entire life. And I can think of this one instance where some girls bullied me, and this is how it went. they were older than me. It was 2 against 1. I was walking to school, and this was before I was a safety patrol nerd.
Okay. Wear that old
And
badge, you know?
and this is just, you know, like, I don't know if you ever seen those shows, Mean Girls. Well, these were Mean Girls. And I was wearing a training bar. I was probably like, it was like a t-shirt. All right. So it was probably like, I mean, I was probably like maybe 3rd or 4th grade, and they were 6th graders or something.
Oh my
you know?
God.
So I was like, oh my
That's big.
God. Yeah. So they were older than me, and they were like, oh, look at you with your training bra, blah, blah, blah. And like, they were teasing me, and they were trying to humiliate me. And I was humiliated. I felt horrible. And, you know, of course I go home and I'm like, I'm taking this thing off. And I just wore regular t-shirts after that, because I didn't have boobs or anything. And, but I mean,
you know, when you're that
was them being the bully, and I could never, and it was like this weird thing. I never said anything. I just, you know, held it, you know, you held it in and stuff, but I couldn't see how that could, you know, play out. Like, if somebody is a little bit older and has some sort, you feel like they have some sort of authority over you. That can be, you know, like
that
later
little
on.
wound. That one stays in you.
Like later on, like if you don't deal with it, later on, you could be like, okay, you're in high school and you got like this, I don't know, maybe it'll show up like, oh, maybe, you know, maybe some boys were attracted to you or something like that, and you still don't have boobs, girls. You know, and they're like teasing you or something. I know this is silly, but it can affect you. It can affect you.
Well, that little wound goes deep down inside, and that's the thing. And then you get triggered.
Yeah.
That's the word. You get triggered by one of these power players because somebody says something or looks at you, and all of a sudden you turn into that 10-year-old on that playground.
Yeah. And you're like,
and you're 42 years old.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, like, it would play out like that little thing. It would play out. There was a thread through my entire life. And until finally I was like, why am I feeling
Cut
my
that
feelings
thread.
why are my feelings being hurt because of some dumb girl on the playground or whatever they said.
I never saw her again.
But it affected, what's interesting, it affected my self-esteem. I felt victimized, and it did kind of affect my sense of self-worth later on down the road, which I realize now, but it was a thread that I had to pull back. And that's how, you know, well, one little thing, you know, being bullied by some girls about something that, you know, which should be meaningless. It should be forgotten or whatever. But when people are mean, but when people and kids are mean, kids are very mean. Kids are very mean. So we carry that through our entire life. But you can see how I could have felt like, okay, I'm being bullied. How do I deal with the bully? I'm being somewhat victimized. And I carried that through my entire, and I might have even used it in ways to sabotage myself. I don't even know, but you know, psychologically I could find myself being victimized. And I was like, you know what, I have to stand up and develop some self-esteem here and not let that bother me in other instances, which I had to figure out where that thread was. Because I was like, why am I feeling like this? Why am I letting this person take my power away from me?
And that's
as an adult.
Away. And what I want people to know is that these power players, they all work interactively.
Yeah.
Your self-esteem goes, and then you have, you know, you're just freaking out. You feel like a victim.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a common fear.
Yeah.
Because you know, it's a common fear that when you feel this way, you just don't know what to do. And then all these other things, you know, you get into this mode where sometimes you think back and you're like, how did I let myself get like that?
Yeah.
By a comment, by something
Where did it come from? Yeah.
Exactly.
Where did it come from? But these all play out as we mature. They mature with us. And we can't, you know, we can't escape them. They're there, and they're there to shine the light on how to navigate through it. It's like I had to have some courage, you know, like there was an action that I had to take to maintain my self-esteem in dealing with that feeling victimized.
You felt like a victim.
Yeah.
And it hits you like a ton of bricks. And a lot of times we start second guessing ourselves.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's also part of our tribal, because as a kid, we're taught to be ladylike, to not fight back. As a child, just sit there and, children are meant to be seen and not heard. These are all the tapes that
and as
conflict.
Yeah.
You don't want to create conflict.
Right.
So you just sit there and take it.
Yeah.
And in the long run, you pay dearly for doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pay dearly for doing that.
Yeah.
So,
but how do you, it's a part of our process of growth. And, we learn things through, as we're coming up as children and then teenagers, and we're experimenting as teenagers. And then as young adults, we may enter relationships where we get married, we have our own children, and then we're trying to raise them. And then whatever life experiences come after that. So it's interesting, like the scenarios and the power plays that happen just between, people. And then
all the time,
every
day. Even your own kids, if you've got children and they're little.
Yeah. They show up there. They show up there.
Do.
Your kids will be like, trying to sell you out from one parent to the other, like they just intuitively know how to maybe manipulate and utilize these archetypes very well, very, very well.
Exactly. And then the one that's a real big deal is the saboteur. They all work together, but this is a power player, and it is a guardian of our choice.
Yeah.
And the way that this archetype is known to us is through disruption. Disruption. And it's our ability to connect and survive in the world. And it's our fear of survival. It's like being the lion in the Wizard of Oz. Here's this lion. And like Shell, like you said, you needed to develop courage to stand up to these bully girls. Yeah. Just like the lion, he's running around and he's this fierce animal, but he doesn't have any courage.
Yeah.
So he's got to, and as we all know, the story of the Wizard of Oz, he finally realizes that the wizard is just a little old bald man behind this curtain. And he's had his courage all along. And I love the wizard, and we should do a kind of an interactive archetypal, show on the wizard and the power, the survivors.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, how do you sabotage yourself in life? Well,
so many ways.
Talk about COVID-19 now. We tend to shortchange ourselves. We discount our talents. We don't believe that we can do the job because maybe we don't have that, and you take another course or another class. And
I think an easy example of sabotaging oneself that people can really get is, I'm gonna start a workout. I'm going to start a workout program. I set my alarm and then nope, I'm not going to get up. Even when it's a healthy thing to do, and you should, because maybe you got some blood work back and your cholesterol's high and stuff, and you're like, I should be exercising. My doctor just told me like I should be taking care of my body, and I'm not doing it. And you think, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do it, or I'm going to set this time, and you neglect doing it. You come up with something. Oh, you make an excuse. Oh, so-and-so called, I get on the phone, or, oh, I got to go to the grocery store and go shopping because I got like this, that, and the other thing. Or you just find excuses not to do what you should be doing. That's an easy way people constantly say.
Oh, all the time, right? You're not true to your word. If you say, okay, I'm going to get up because it's going to be my health that I want to make sure that I keep in check.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you start telling yourself all these stories as to why you really need to wait another day. And that other day turns into 5 years.
Yeah.
You don't work out in 5 years. It's not good.
I'll tell you, I've had people pay me and never show up one day for a class.
Wow.
I'm like, seriously? I've send them emails, send them stuff. And I was like,
Wow.
what are they doing to sabotage? I should send out, like, you know what, I should put together an email, like when people do that, like,
Yes.
and say, you are sabotaging your
Oh
health.
my God.
I should send out an
Exactly.
email saying that,
Yes.
because I usually send out these cute little emails. Hey, we missed you. Where are you? Is there something I should know? Blah, blah, blah. And
Wow.
I might get a response for them, but they still won't show up for the class. And it's just, it's amazing to me, that's one little way that if you're listening to this show, that
Mhm.
you can identify with, that are really, can be significantly, sometimes even eating habits can be a way you sabotage yourself to suppress emotions, or
Right.
like you might overeat or you might undereat, you might not eat enough, you might be, I think there's a lot of health issues going on with that, but I think those are ways that people can identify easily with, as examples of how the saboteur enters your life. and
That's
and
that's
yeah, um the child is just, when are you behaving like a 2-year-old?
I
Right.
know, right? Screaming at your boss.
Yeah, yeah.
But let's talk about work, because that's
Yeah.
where the prostitute comes in a lot, because
Mhm.
it's the keeper of the faith.
Yeah.
And what do you do to sell yourself,
Mhm.
sell your ideas, or
Yeah.
hold yourself back? Because a lot of times the prostitute shows up when we're in unhappy marriages or unhappy jobs,
Yeah.
because the core issue is, what's your price? What
Yeah.
are you willing to pay? And so many people stay in unhappy marriages, or
Mhm.
they're in unhappy careers because they're afraid of, maybe they're tied to that paycheck. It's all about finances,
Yeah.
and not having faith enough in yourself to kind of let go. And we were talking about that when we were doing our show notes,
Oh, yeah.
as
Yeah.
to how, I know I've been guilty. I stayed in a marriage way too long that
Yeah.
didn't serve me, because I was in fear and I
Yeah.
didn't know what was going to be on the other side. And I still had, kids to support. And I think a lot of women do this, and some
Oh,
men
absolutely.
too,
I know, I went back into a relationship,
right.
after I was divorced. I went back and lived with my ex-husband instead of staying with my grandmother, because I wanted to be closer to my kids. And
Right.
and I knew that my prostitute was fully in full, expression, but
Right.
I negotiated with myself,
Right.
but
We
I
all do.
and then too, it cost me some cell tissue, and
Mm.
that's the price of these. Like, when you're dealing with them, it is making choices, but it will cost,
Also
self
your
tissue, your
energy.
energy,
Yeah.
everything. And you have to, I guess you have to really
Be
uh,
aware.
be completely aware, so you maintain your energy in a higher vibration during those times. And it's really
It's very
challenging.
hard. But
And
I'll give you an example, because it's like we were talking about, we've been working really, I would say vigorously,
yeah.
with at a really big clip, and
Oh,
still
fast pace.
taking care of our other companies and our business responsibilities. And we're both moms, and even though our kids are older, but they're there and we have lives.
Yeah.
And because we're in alignment and we've dealt with all of this and we have become aware. I mean, I remember when I met you at Carolyn's, I was still at a clip, but sometimes I would just feel like the weight of the world on my shoulders, or this like dark cloud, and you just
Right.
keep plugging through,
Yeah.
because you're like, no, you're all happy and peppy, and you put on a smile, and you create these stories in your head, which,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want to really stop and look at yourself in the mirror of truth, like I call it, to
Yeah.
see what are the real stories going on.
Yeah.
And when we start dealing with these power players and realize what we're doing to ourselves, the freedom that you feel and the energy that you get
Mm-hmm.
is just incredible.
Yeah.
And you can be in such a wonderful state, creating and doing what you love to do, being in a way where you just don't feel that how can I put this, you just feel so tired all the time. It's hard to get up in the morning. It's like drudgery. I like to say, because I've been there, you're living a life in quiet desperation. You're desperate. You just don't know, and you're in survival mode.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because, when we're talking about this, it's like, how do people identify them? Because they're probably, if someone's listening to the show right now, it's like, oh, I kind of am wondering what they're talking about. But
Right.
basically, it's like, we're in a process of a story, and you find what is the story happening in your life, and you can find these archetypal patterns in these stories. When we're watching, all of us can say we love to go to the movies, we love
I
to
love the
watch
movies.
a really good movie. Are we in a comedy or are we in a serious drama? Are we in a thriller? Are we in a freaking nightmare kind of
Right.
TV show or something? And we can identify. We're really, it's fascinating to me is we somehow lose that aspect. We really kind of, we have our superheroes when we're kids. We really,
Right.
we can identify, we really kind of know archetypal language and intuition when we're younger, but it's kind of almost beaten out of us somehow. I don't know if it's, or
Societal,
dismissed.
maybe.
Something happens, and then, or we lose it because of, I don't know, external influences. Maybe it's the influences of society, our parents, going into the school systems. I have no idea how it happens. But once you get it back, you're like, oh my God, you can see it almost
You're so
everywhere.
much in control of your life. You have no idea. Right?
Yeah. And stories really help with that. Myths.
Yeah.
There's reasons why, people read the Bible because there's stories in there that apply to today. Or there's mythological stories that will apply to today. They have some universal, learning behind it.
We grew up with Grimm's fairy tales, remembering Aesop's fables, and they were like the tortoise and the hare. Remember that story? I love that story. That the tortoise always ended the race because the hare was always running around like a lunatic and never got to the finish line.
Right.
But these were stories that we would be told and taught. And it was about virtues, and it was about just these things that we talk about, myths.
Yeah.
But they're on the wayside.
And we can find those storylines in our own life. Like oftentimes if we're watching movies, we can pick out who's going to be the victim, or who's going to be the victimizer, or who's going to be, who's going to be selling themselves out to their boss. For I'm going to get this, I'm going to get that big promotion if I do this, that, or the other thing.
But here's the thing, Shell, that I want people to know. There comes a point in time where that inner voice, that intuition starts kind of knocking on your head and saying, I just don't want to do this anymore. And that's when you start becoming aware, because you realize that you're taken advantage of, or you realize that your true talents aren't being rewarded. Let's say in the case of the prostitute, and you have to have faith to make a decision.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Are you going to stand up to your boss? Are you going to find another job where they value you?
Well, and I think as Americans, it's all about the stuff, Shell. Everybody wants their stuff, and they're not willing to give up their stuff. And when we did our whole series on sacred contracts of America, I'm just thinking of good old Tommy Jefferson there, who didn't want to give up his stuff, But I
think the world is in a point right now with COVID where people are reassessing their values.
Yeah.
They're reassessing their values.
Absolutely.
And I know that we are in total turmoil, and our next show is going to touch on that.
Yes.
But here's the thing. When you go through a transformation, you have to go through a crisis, and you have to go through chaos to be able to get out of the other side.
Yeah.
And it's like the definition of insanity. Do you want to continue the same thing,
No, thanks.
doing the same thing day in and day out? Or do you want to take a stop and maybe take a different course so that your life can get better?
Yeah.
And it starts with you. No one can teach you this except yourself. We're just facilitators and we're coaches on the journey, but you've got to do the work. And, I remember when I was in a marriage that was really taking its toll on me, that I was, you know, I was going to this seminar and that seminar, and I was reading this book and that book. I must have had like 25, you know, be better, love yourself.
Oh, all
Be
the
happy
self-help books, right?
Yes.
Ah,
And then I jumped into Carolyn's course with you, and I totally realized that it was not about the external world. It was about me. What was going to make me happy? I needed to fulfill myself. And as women, Shell, and as a mom, we always put ourselves last. That's the problem. You know, we don't take time to really connect with what do we need. And a lot of times we're in survival mode because you just have to be in survival mode. You have to work, you have to put food on the table, you've got to do all these things, and you just don't take time to reflect and listen to your intuition, which is really, really important.
yeah. And I think, you know, when we talk about survival mode, I wonder if people really know how deep that runs, because it's one thing to put a roof over your head and to have food on the table, clothing, you know, those are survival things. But we have turned that into, in our culture, is maintaining a certain level of a lifestyle and a quality of life. And
Right.
that turns into keeping those things which repurpose, like kind of like, you know, bring that survival mode up to another level. Like now we
Right.
have a mortgage. So, you know, we could still, you know, live with mom and dad or whatever, but we don't want to do that. Or we have a mortgage. So these survival archetypes kind of, you know, go with us at each tier and each level to
Right.
maintain a certain level of a quality of life. And how we manage that, and whether or not we sell ourselves out to maintain that quality of life.
Well, you just have to, and I think it goes back to the basics. Try and live within your means so that you don't get into this point. But
Right.
now I know a lot of people are in difficult situations, and I do pray for everyone, because a lot of people, they are out of work,
Yeah.
and some of them don't know how they're going to be paying their mortgage or their rent, and
Could
you know,
feel very victimized by that too, I would
right,
suspect, you
right.
know?
But it's just part of life. And I think if we get a handle on our inner world and ourselves, that we are able to make decisions not from a survival point of view, but make decisions from a more, I guess, integrated with your head and your heart point of view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah, oh, sorry. I thought you.
no, go ahead. I
And
really,
yeah, and I thought that, you know, like, I think you're totally on the right track. You have to integrate actually even these archetypal patterns, because they help
yes.
you. They help you to become aware of where you might be losing energy, losing physical energy, as opposed to gaining energy, which is power. And true power is the ability to be in that aligned state. So if you have the energy to move forward into some of this unknown stuff that's happening.
And maybe you have a new career coming your way, but because you are in this mode of survival with these archetypes, you're not able to make that choice, because you feel that you've got to stay where you are and you're selling yourself short. So you have to see clearly, and you have to have faith that you can move on, because a lot of people are getting hired. You know, I've been talking to some people that just got jobs. You just have to think differently and maybe cut the things that are not necessities in your life if you're in that situation. I know that I've totally changed my life since COVID started. And my husband and I were talking about it the other day, how we used to have a big office, and, you know, we don't need that. There's so many things in this world that I think COVID has made us realize that you don't need, because with those wants and needs, you have all this pressure to produce and to make all this money. And at the end of the day, all you need is a laptop, you know, right? Or a phone. I mean, you can do your business from your phone. I mean, why put all this pressure on you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like crazy, right?
It is. It totally is. You know, just keep it simple. Take care of yourself. Take time to reflect. you know, connect with yourself. These are things that they don't cost any money. And I think because now we've had a pause in our lives, we're able to do it.
Yeah.
We're able to just take a moment and just say, wow, you know, I'm so grateful and thankful that I have my health.
Yeah.
And that's huge. That's
Is
huge today.
totally huge. And not to worry about like what's coming, you know, be in the
Oh,
moment.
you have to have
Be in the
faith.
moment. You got to have faith. Things are going to work out. You know, like things are going to be okay. And we are going to move forward, and I think some great things are ahead of us.
Yes, yes. And we want to give you all the tools to be able to navigate your lives effortlessly and in a state of happiness and of joy. And Shell, should we tell them what we're working on?
Yeah.
This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Our 5-day challenge, right?
Yes.
And it's free because we want to offer as much as we can to help you guys be able to change your lives. And it's something that Shelley and I have done. It's totally changed our lives. I know it's changed mine, and I know it's changed yours too.
Well, it helped me through some very major turning points in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like crisis situations. If I didn't understand these, because I don't believe, like, I mean, learning about these archetypal patterns was the difference between seeing a counselor, which I felt like they had no clue. And I mean, like they could not tap into what I was experiencing.
Right.
And the answers that I received here made so much more sense. And you know, I didn't find myself in years of therapy or whatever,
Right.
and can function in life, you know, in a highly in life, and doing the things that I love and enjoyed doing at the time, where I could have been devastated. I can think of people off the top of my head who went through some similar experiences, who, I mean, had to, I mean, severe depression, severe hospitalization. And I mean, I look back and I'm like, oh, I know exactly what that person's talking about.
Absolutely.
I've been there.
So have I.
But
Absolutely.
my way, understanding these archetypal patterns, how they were playing out, how they caused maybe some karma and some backlash or whatever, because of choices that I made earlier on, and then how to navigate through them to self-correct.
Yes.
Way. I mean, these patterns help me with that significantly.
They're huge. And you know, I've been where you are too. You know, I went after my divorce, I was devastated, and I went to counselor. I went to a big time professional.
Yeah.
And she did help me, but there was a point where you've got to do the work yourself.
Absolutely.
No one can tell you.
Yeah.
You have to apply it to your life, and it's baby steps.
Yeah.
But once you have the toolkit and you start applying it, you don't allow that person or that situation to suck you in.
Yeah.
You're like, hold up, I got my power players with me here, okay?
Yeah.
I got my power players, and I know where this energy is coming from, and we're gonna flip that switch, and I'm gonna hold my power. I'm not gonna give it away. I'm gonna hold my energy center. And it's scary because it's a whole new way of being and a whole new way of looking at life. But boy, is it freeing.
Yeah.
You have to be, you know, getting up at 1 a.m. because you can't sleep thinking about that situation or thinking about that person.
Yeah. And you power yourself up.
Yes.
You power yourself up. You power up. You know, like you power up. We've heard so much of empowerment over the years, but this is about really, truly powering up.
Yes. Power up.
Yep.
So stay tuned for our 5-day Power Up Challenge, because people, life is a game, and we've got to play it to the power up degree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's really, I mean, today's show, we talked a little bit about the 4 archetypal patterns. Believe me, folks, there's so much more to these.
Oh my gosh.
There's so much more to these. And we'd love to share more. We have actually this is 19. We have 2 more shows left of this season.
And our season is over. Season 1.
Yeah, season 1. I'm like, wow, who'd have thought? I'm like, holy
Yeah.
moly, 21 shows in like, 2 months or something.
Yeah. That's because we are in alignment and our power players are helping us move forward. That's exactly right.
Absolutely. And putting together this challenge, everything. We've been so in complete alignment and getting like this universal help along the way. Right? Like,
yes, it's been so great.
It has been effortless. It's really kind of cool. So is there anything else that you want to add?
I just wanted to tell everybody that, if you have questions, we have more to share with you.
Yeah.
To help you on your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Right?
Yeah.
So, let's see. Okay. So in our next episode, Shelley and I are going to talk about transforming chaos and how innovation is creative destruction. Things are dismantling now, so we're going to talk about that and then how to come through it. Right? All right. So we want to thank you for joining us on this show today. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave a review and mention how we might have motivated or inspired you. And then you make sure you subscribe to either on iTunes, or you can download or watch on YouTube. You can find us there. And you can find everything at our website, evolve360show.com. And I think that's it. I'm like, wow. All right, so this is
Cheli Grace
and Shelley Devine with Life Unplugged, Raw and Real.
Woo!
Oh, I know. See you on the next Evolve 360 Shelley Shell Show. Thank you so much for listening.
And don't forget to power up.
All right? All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.